Good evening and welcome to the first Inside Government Show for the fall 22 semester here at Cayuga Community College. And it's a show that's broadcast on Spectrum, Verizon, Fios, the Auburn Regional Media Access, better known as ARMA, as well as the college's radio station, WIN 89.1. I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. Our first guest, as usually occurs, with rare exceptions, is the mayor of the city of Auburn, Mayor Michael D. Quill, who is just over the midpoint of his fourth four-year term as mayor, having been elected in 2007. We've asked the mayor on to give a city update, as we have done, I think, each semester for the last 12 or 13 years, as it may be. We're going to talk about the newly created park at the old Calet site, renovations to the Loop Road parking garage, as well as what's on the agenda at City Council and other items. Welcome back to the studio.
Glad to be back.
I think it's
in person.
Well, it is, and I think it's you or Jeff Parazola who's the reigning champ. But where you, I have to go search out to get on. He volunteers every week. So, how are you and your family? Now that I don't know if COVID's over, but it's taken a back seat to things.
Everyone is doing fine. We've all, my family, we've all had a brush with COVID, but nothing serious. It's serious because of what it is, but no one with hospitalization or anything, so we're all doing fine.
How about city staff? How are they doing during all this? I know they had the
city staff have been remarkable. When City Hall was almost shut down and they were working the skeleton staff, they were taking work home. They are remarkable. Each and every department was terrific. So. And
you're back to regular. I know this started more than in the last couple of months, but you are fully back to sessions where the public can come in, they can speak. Everybody's been back. You're not doing any remote.
We still, we are open to the public. Our sessions are always open, for the last few months forward. They are still televised, and that still goes on. But we believe we should be open, and we do our best to be open.
So let's go a long Frisbee throw from your office. Okay. You got a parking garage that has on and off been closed. It seems closed, but parts of it closed on and off for the last couple of months. What is occurring there?
I want to say it's like doing repairs at your home. When you
never ending.
It never ends. I didn't know this was going to happen, or I didn't know that was going to happen. But it's slowly wrapping up where we should be pretty much back to normal within the next month or so if it takes that long.
So what was being done?
Well, it started out that some of the surfaces need to be repaired. There was some cracking. There was other issues. And it basically, a big part of it, there was a fire on the ground floor many years ago. The lawn mower, whatever, sweeper had caught fire. I still haven't found out, I'm sure they have, as to what caused the fire.
So there was a public bathroom there. Is now the public bathroom basically the visitor center now? Have you gotten rid of that, or is that?
I could get back to. I don't have that answer.
So one of the things that has occurred during that period of time has been you've given some 2-hour free parking.
Yes.
That's still the case right now.
Yep.
And it's limited to 2 hours. Is that going to continue?
There's debate going on amongst the council members. Some believe in it, some don't. Some days I believe in it, some days I don't. I think I hate to say that some of our local citizens take advantage of this system.
Well, sometimes some business owners are not business owners; they're employees, where they can get them, are their own worst enemies, parking in front of their establishment.
I won't deny that.
Okay. You won't deny it. Okay. So
my wife, not to get off subject, but when Joe and I first started dating, the parking garage wasn't there. She worked at the National Bank, and we had to drive into a muddy field, for lack of better words, to drop her off at work or pick her up for lunch or whatever.
So project's almost done. Is that largely funded by the city? Is it state money? I know there was a question at some point that some of the money for the visitor center was going to be not necessarily the visitor center money, but in that pool of money was going to be able to be used for the garage.
That was the understanding, and there was some, because of the fire that occurred there was some insurance money involved in that. So but it's like repairing your home. You know, you go to replace a floor, and then you say, well, we're here, we might as well replace this wall, and we might as well paint everything. It just keeps growing. But everything we've done to the parking garage was a necessity.
So the city has has had some great success in the last 4 or 5 years, if not beyond, with grants.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that, let's say, is you had a governor prior to Kathy Hochul who changed the way economic development ran. You've also, in the last 2 or 3 years, had a lot of money from Washington that's flowed from Washington to Albany. I want to talk about a couple of those pots. The first one is City Council about 2 weeks ago approved a Restore New York application. This is for a project up on East Hill.
Correct.
So this is the Bartolotas.
That's correct.
So this is on the south side. It's next to Sam's shoe store.
22 East Genesee.
Okay. So what's being done there?
Basically, I have my notes here. It's been vacant for many years, you said, fallen in disrepair, creating an eyesore. Converted into a mixed-use project containing commercial space on the first floor. The firefighters used to call them a taxpayer.
Okay.
All right. Mixed-use project containing commercial space on the first floor, apartments on the upper floor. And renovations will include new plumbing, electrical, sprinklers, heating, venting, air conditioning, plumbing. Basically a same old shell with a new inside.
So that is one of the few vacant properties, though, up on East Hill. So
Correct.
that will kind of complete that block up there.
Correct.
Why did firefighters, I want to go back to this because it was a great piece. Why did firefighters call it a taxpayer?
I guess because there was a dwelling where the owner lived in and they had a storefront or whatever.
Okay.
All right, just the store's paying the taxes for the home.
Do you have any idea when, I know the applications are due, I think, next Friday. Do you have any idea when you'll hear back?
It's always later than we expect or hope for, but no, I do not.
And that's a competitive process.
You know, to be very honest, it is a competitive process. We have such a great planning staff and the entire city staff. They all work together and they just put the package together with the council's blessing, and we move forward.
So a couple of projects that have occurred that you have underway or have been completed. The city opened up a new, what I call a pocket park on Upper State Street, which is the old Calitz building.
Correct.
Is that project complete?
Yes. That's my knowledge.
And what type of events? It's an open air park. What type of events do you expect to have there?
Just about anything that would, the band concerts. I would like to see something like the Music Theater Festival come downtown to do a couple of things down there, or school groups or whatever. So there's no set mission for it that it's limited to this or that. It's just an area for.
And I expect we'll talk to Jeff Dygert about this when he comes on in a couple of weeks. But does that mean you most likely eliminate now closing off State Street? Because occasionally that has been, and there's been some residents and some business owners who have not been keen because they're not. It's been closed off for bar patrons and entertainment.
It's a balancing act to try to please everyone. State Street.
You might as well just give up on that.
Yeah, agreed. But it's one block long, and it means it's important to downtown, but it's important for people to have a place to gather to go downtown. I was downtown a few weeks back. Downtown was closed off, but we don't have the turnout of people. I guess earlier in the day there were a lot of people down at the Tomato Fest. Was what it was for, and I was there near the end. But people still like the idea of getting out, getting together, being with their friends, listening to music or whatever.
So you could still, in some cases, you have that pocket park, there still could be streets that are closed down for events.
It is. In my mind, it makes sense for the park to be there. So if you have a band or something, they could set up there. But people could still be in the whole block and listening to the music or meeting up with friends, and there's restaurants nearby.
That was in part funded with this DRI money, the Downtown Revitalization money.
Yep.
You've had a couple of projects. That award was about 3 years ago? 4 years ago?
About 3 years.
So Nick's Rides building behind the old, what I call the convent behind Holy Family, is done.
Yes.
The Auburn Public Theater has completed their project, Culinary Institute for this college is done. Fire department is done.
Correct.
Calitz is done.
Correct.
Or what I call the Calitz.
No,
Is that ever going to get a name, or is it always going to be the Calitz until a new generation of Auburnians are born?
I think the council at this point does not want to name it anything.
Okay. Because that's its own drama there. You have the public art, which I know that committee has met to do public art downtown, and there were some funds. So are you is there anything left that still needs to be done out of the DRIs?
Well, now the DRI is pretty well wrapped up, but there's always, it's like your own home. There's always something, one more project to pick up on. So,
did any projects not get done, and you could repurpose the money in there?
I could get back. I don't have that.
So I know that DRIs there were applications now by smaller communities. I think, if I remember correctly, Aurora just applied for one. Do you think there will be a time again where the city of Auburn will be able to reapply? I know the first ones were, I know Cortland received theirs, Oswego, I know Fulton's in the middle of theirs, Auburn. Do you think you'll be able to reapply again?
I would hope they keep this program going, because I think it's been very useful for the city of Auburn and for other cities and communities. So I would hope so.
Do you think that's still a priority for Kathy Hochul?
I haven't spoken with the governor in quite a while, for no particular reason. Just she has many things going on. She's from upstate, she's from the Buffalo area. She realizes that this is a boost in the economy. And speaking of that, look at the project just was announced in Syracuse area.
Well, I was going to ask you, how do you see the chip factory impacting Auburn?
Initially, I see it impacted. I think it's going to draw people to work there, probably from Utica to between Rochester, Buffalo area, that entire area.
So a twofold impact. One would be the issue that people will be drawn there to work, which it's already tough to hire people. We'll get to that with the Auburn the Auburn Police Department in a few minutes. But do you also see that people are going to reside here because it's commutable, and it will impact positively real estate?
Yes, it has to. I really see it as a very long-term plus, and they deserve a lot of credit for working this
imagining
out.
it and
Absolutely.
being site ready.
Absolutely.
Speaking of property, I do want to ask you a question. William Fulton, who is from Auburn and is a well-known planner and designer. He was at the Willard Chapel, I want to say 2 Fridays ago. In fact, you named it William Fulton Day.
Yes.
He was asked a question I thought was interesting by somebody from the audience, and he was very clear. Well, I won't tell you what his answer was. The question came up, we have a lot of churches that are now on the block to be sold. Yeah. We know there's it's the Priest House on Lewis. Right. We've got St. Alphonsus, Blessed Trinity School. We've got Holy Family School. What do you think can be done with these buildings?
I'm sure a lot of them, I feel, I don't know this firsthand, they're in a state of disrepair. They need a lot of work. We just sold we as the city just sold the old Polish home, and that's going to be for housing. So maybe something along those lines. These schools.
That's in the middle of State Street over by the barbers. Okay.
Yeah. And something at the same time, who is going to pay for this? And there's a lot of folks that need housing that cannot afford housing.
So do you think it's really you're going to find the right developer?
I do. But the developers, I think we can find, but who is going to pay the initial cost and what is going to keep it going over the long term?
So these are key properties.
Yes.
I mean, if you look at Upper North Street, which I will call Upper North Street, it's a large complex where Holy Family is.
Right.
You look at the East End with St. Alphonsus, and we don't know what other properties may come up. Do you think there's a role for the city to play in that redevelopment, or is that literally a diocese issue right now?
I'm sure. I believe it's a diocese issue what they decide to do. but I'm 99.9% sure that the city will do everything and anything we can do to not so much get it back on a tax roll, but it can be looked at as unsightly when you're driving down Genesee Street or North Street. It's sad. I went to the old St. Mary's School on Clark Street. That's long. You probably don't even remember that.
I do know.
Okay, but that's long gone.
So with that in mind, were you surprised? And again, I don't want to get mixed church and state here, but clearly I was surprised when I read the paper the other day that the Rochester Diocese kind of punted on the consolidation of churches.
Yeah.
You know,
I can't say I was surprised.
Well, I know you're not surprised, but they put all that energy and political capital, as I would say, that we got to consolidate. The churches are not filled, and this was pre-COVID, by the way.
Right. Yeah.
It's even gotten worse since then. But I could see more churches becoming on the market.
Yes.
I mean, think of what's going on. I want to say the church up on the east end. It had the large circular. I want to say Evan. No, on Evan, next to Evans Street.
All right. Yeah.
You know, they finally got somebody to move in there, but it's a church.
Yeah.
When you look for a private developer, there wasn't anybody there, unless they could butcher it.
Exactly. Then you have to worry about all the restrictions and what you can and can't do, and so that knowing very little about the construction business, just to rebuild my own home, help another. It's always cost you much more than you originally intended, and that's just a single family home or something.
So while you might have nobody developing churches right now, what does seem to be a perception out there is the number of shops in Auburn that are selling vape materials.
Right.
Do you agree with that assessment that it seems to be a booming industry?
I agree that it's becoming a booming industry, but there's been many. You're looking surprised at me, but I didn't say I'm in favor of a booming.
No, I'm not saying that, but I guess my question is, the perception is that if there's development right here, it's now car washes and vaping outlets. So are there? I don't want to get into the car wash issue, but on the vaping shops, is there a limit to how many there can be?
We're working on that. We're revising our code, so staff is well aware of council's wishes that we're concerned about where they are in the compactness of all the different stores together. That's not the correct term, but I think
because right now the city is looking at a rezoning.
That's correct.
Plan. Where are you in that process right now?
I would say we're probably, I'm going to guess, half to 3/4 of the way there.
So I know planning board. This is Tuesday the 4th. I want to make sure I have my date right. I know planning board makes a recommendation or sends it, has to have a hearing. I know somebody who's chairing that meeting.
Yeah.
Then they send it over to city council. You will then have to approve it. Are there big changes besides that issue of?
It all depends on where you're sitting. You know, to me, it may not be monumental, but it may be to you and with respect to everything.
Well, and I know there are some residents down by Tops who are not happy about some rezoning there, which I think every time, and I don't mean it just for them, but I know when the rezoning was done in 1992, that was the same area where there was some contention about how things are zoned. So I want to go back to not necessarily the vaping shops, but are any of these stores now allowed to sell marijuana-based products at this stage?
I can't answer that, Guy, because I don't honestly know.
But the state is going through the licensing.
Right.
So one of the comments I heard someone say, and I can't remember who, or at least I won't attribute it to them, was that many of these vaping shops have set up because their hope is to be given the licenses.
Correct.
And there will be a limit to the number of licenses. Am I correct?
I believe that's by state regulated.
So I thought I had heard in Auburn there would be 3.
I don't know that.
Okay. Do you know where the process is for the state?
No, I don't. I haven't received any updates that I'm aware of, and I think it's just one of those things that everyone's hoping for this, hoping for that, but no one knows for sure.
So while it's legal in New York to possess and consume, it is not legal in the city of Auburn to sell right now.
At this point, correct.
Okay.
It is correct.
There is no connection that I'm jumping from marijuana to the police department.
Okay.
Okay. So if I'm doing my math correctly,
okay,
you are about 6 officers short right now of what would normally be a full complement of officers.
Correct.
With that being said, you just had a civil service exam about 2 weeks ago. Where are you in filling those vacancies?
The chief meets regularly with the city manager at least once a week. They have a weekly meeting. It's not just particular to Auburn, though. It's all across the country, basically, the state for sure.
In law enforcement, it seems to be enormously a problem.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, Ben Walsh and your neighboring mayor just swore in, 3?
Yeah.
And how many do they have as vacancies there?
They're probably double the size, at least, of Auburn, so the same number of openings. You know, when I was hired at the fire department in 1973, between the fire and the police, many of them were Vietnam veterans. Not just by circumstance. You know, it wasn't something I always want to be a firefighter. I always want to be a police officer. But that age,
there were opportunities there.
Yeah, there was because there was no work around anywhere.
Right. It was either factory work, family business, or that.
Factories were closing back a little bit. There weren't the openings there. So my son-in-law is a police sergeant in a neighboring community, and they have the same issues there that we have here. If you have a good candidate, you think is a good, strong candidate, something 9 times out of 10 pops up to give you a second thought whether you're going the right way. I don't know why folks don't want to take this. I wouldn't want to be a police officer. You know, I have nothing against. My son was a police officer.
Well, the image of police officers dramatically changed, at least in the last 10 years.
Society has changed in the last 10 years.
So, are you aware, is council aware whether there were enough people taking that exam 2 weeks ago where you could, and this is a long process, it takes a year from exam or offering the exam to getting somebody on the street alone.
Well,
do you think you have enough in that pool right now? Because as I've been told, I think Chief Sladen sat there, or it was Chief Butler, and I don't want to attribute this to them incorrectly, but they said, you know, first of all, if you had 100 people who took the exam, some of them aren't going to pass.
Right.
Some are not going to pass the physical fitness piece, and some are not going to pass the background piece.
Absolutely.
And now you're got a smaller pool to choose from.
And plus, other departments in the surrounding areas are trying to lure them away.
So I was going to ask that question about laterals. So the city has done from time to time laterals. Yep. In the 90s, they did laterals. I think you did laterals again in the last 10 years. Is that something on the radar for you?
We haven't approached the subject, but it has to be. It has.
There's no choice.
If we can't get these young folks to take the exam, and take an exam, pass an exam, then passing, as you said, the physical fitness, the background test, you have a very small select group, and it almost gets to the point of the highest bidder, who's going to pay the most.
And we know that's happening in healthcare, where they're signing bonuses and they're stealing nurses left and right.
Yeah, and I want to understand, I'm not knocking the police department or the employees. It's just it's a fact of life.
Is the same issue with recruitment occurring in your old department? You were the fire chief. Is it just as tough? Do you still have the number of vacancies over there?
I don't. They're not. I don't believe they're equal to the police department in numbers as far as looking for employees.
So about 2 weeks ago, some tests were taken of Owasco Lake.
Yes.
And there was an increase in toxins. I am not going to be like Councilor Cuddy and give you the scientific names, because I don't know them. Those numbers are down though now.
Yes. Yeah.
So any idea what caused the increase?
I just think it's a natural occurring. I talked long and hard about the lake with staff and everything. And right off the bat, I want to say thanks to Seth Jensen and everyone that works in his department. They are terrific. They're right on top of everything. Whatever we need to know, they're right there with us. And Seth gave me some stats and so forth. I just think it's a way of life.
You think it's a cyclical thing that we're going to have to expect with the environment? So
and not to interrupt you, but I've said this before. Our watershed is so large for Owasco Lake. If we receive 1 inch of water in the watershed, it'll raise the level of the lake 1 foot. So it's just.
So bottom line, as far as you're concerned, is Auburn's drinking water safe?
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's tested every day. And there's John West doing a great job along with everyone else. We have all the facts and figures.
Well, I asked that because Channel 9 reported that same time where they were talking about the toxins that there was a recommendation that people should keep on hand bottled water. Do you still think that's a good idea?
I personally, I don't, but at the same time, I know my wife keeps a case of water, and she drinks it religiously. So I'm not saying don't buy bottled water, because then tomorrow.
But it's not the city's policy right now to say where it might have been because there was that spike at that particular time. That is not the case.
But the water has always remained constant. The potable water has always been drinkable.
You have a couple of other, one of the comments that will
no, I'm correcting my own language.
One of the comments that would always be said is that part of the reason that there's runoff in the lakes is because we've got all this paving. This is no connection, but you are doing a major paving project at John Street right
Correct.
now. So that's going to be closed for almost a month?
Yes.
Why so long?
It's the only way really to do it. I had some notes on that. I thought I had a little more than I do, but it's needed work for a long time. It's become a shortcut for tractor trailers, and the roads are only made for so much.
So
just needs
your
rebuilding.
expectation is that'll be completed in a month or so.
Correct.
They've completed what I would call the southern part of South Street, the city line down. If you come in at night from the south, it looks like O'Hare.
Yes, it does.
Flying in. Is South Street now complete? Is all the work?
There were some cleanups, final review, minor things.
And there was this the idea that there was a project that's going to be to replace not the street lights. I'm leaving the traffic lights for Jeff Diger.
Okay.
Nice smile, by the way. The lights on the side of the road, are those street lamps? Because I know some of them are out, some of them haven't been working for decades. Is that still a project for the city?
It's always a project for the city, keeping after them. And if there's a light out, you drive by, report it to us, report it to the police, whatever. We do our very best. I know right now we're undergoing a process where we're taking lights down and repainting them out on South Street.
Okay.
So in the process they're using is proven to last a lot longer.
So last question, I mentioned Bill Fulton, the well-known writer and planner, was here about 2 weeks ago. He was asked a question about parking downtown.
Mm-hmm.
And he questioned the logic of back-in parking. Mm-hmm. Not that you've ever heard that question ever before. I know the city, there was a time where you got the state aid. The requirement of the state aid was that you had to have the back-in parking. You could revisit it at some future date. Is that date close?
I'm not aware of the date.
Do you think it will be revisited? I believe there are a number of people who will buy paint for you.
I was downtown today, and there's a truck from Florida, and all the way on the right-hand side, drove all the way across the parking where everybody else is backed in. And I wanted to roll the window down, told him what I thought, but I didn't. From a safety standpoint, it's great. From a parking point, it's terrible. But
okay.
I
only asked that he said he stood there and watched one. He told one relative to drive him around the corner to drop off because they were going to Parker's, and he watched, I think it was his brother, for 20 minutes trying to back in and did that. So I do want to thank you, Mayor, for giving us the time. You have always delightfully come in here and been our first guest of the season with rare exception. And we want to thank you for doing this. Hope you'll come back in a couple of weeks or at least in the spring to talk about what's going on at City Hall.
If we get the parking straightened out, I'll be glad.
You'll be glad.
Anytime you ask. I enjoy the back and forth.
Our guest has been Mayor Michael D. Quill. We do enjoy having him in the studio. We will return in just a moment with Cayuga County's United Way's Executive Director, Catherine Dennis, and Campaign and Marketing Manager, Julissa Stone, to talk about their 100th anniversary that they are celebrating for the Cayuga County United Way, and their event that they will be doing this weekend and next weekend, celebrating their 100th anniversary. We'll be back on Thursday with Auburn Superintendent of Schools, Jeff Perazzola, who, as I said at the beginning, is fighting the mayor for the title of most guest appearances, to give a district update. And on Beyond the Front Page, we will have Cayuga County Public Health Director Kathleen Cuddy, who will give us an update on COVID, her department's efforts to get the flu vaccine out there, and the recent spike that we were just talking about in Owasco Lake of toxins that serves roughly 60,000 residents. Next week, we start our annual series of election forums. Forums are planned for the new 24th Congressional District, featuring Congresswoman Claudia Tenney and her challenger, Steve Holden. The new 48th Senate District will also have a forum with Senator Rachel May and Onondaga County Legislator Julia Abbott, both agreeing to accept our invitation. We are still waiting to hear from Justin Coretti, who's on the conservative line. And we've heard from Bruce McBain, who is running for the 126th Assembly District against Assemblyman John Lamondes, and we hope to be bringing you that at the midpoint of this month. As per past practice, I will moderate the forums, and Jeremy Boyer, the executive editor of The Citizen, will be asking the questions of the candidates. We would like to let you know that you can always send us your ideas for questions or thoughts for future guests, Inside Government or Beyond the Front Page. You can send your questions by email to cozguytho@aol.com. Finally, the Cayuga Community College family lost a longtime employee this summer, Doug Brill, who was a graduate of Cayuga and was this department's chief engineer since 2005. For 16 seasons, he was the man who made us all sound good and also was the go-to man when you had a glitch. He taught thousands of students during his service to this college and this community. He is greatly missed. We are dedicating this season to his memory, and we think of him fondly. I'm Guy Cosentino for Cayuga Community College. I want to thank you for watching, and be safe.